want to check in with my colleague Mike here. Mike, I know you're going to be recording the webinar. Thank you for doing that. And I can go over a little bit of the tech in case you're new to the WebEx platform. Mike is your go-to person if you're having any trouble with any of the pieces of the webinar in terms of trying to get in to write something into your chat window, or trying to send us a message, or any issues with hearing what we're trying to say. Feel free to send a message to him directly. And I want to welcome my colleague Kathleen O'Connell from World Education. And
hello, this is Kathleen O'Connell. I'm the Workplace Education Coordinator here at World Ed.
And I'm Priyanka Sharma. I'm a project director at World Education, and I work across many projects just like Kathleen with NELRC, the New England Literacy Resource Center, NCTN, the EdTech Center at World Ed, so multiple projects. We all both have our hands in multiple projects across the organization. And this webinar is one of NELRC's efforts to help the field integrate multiple mandates. And in this case, the mandate is to address work readiness and to incorporate digital literacy and technology in our programs and classrooms. So I welcome you to the webinar today, and let's get started. This is our agenda for our next hour together. We're going to start with sort of building the case for integrating technology to support workforce skills in the classroom. We're going to do a quick flyby on the employability skills framework, so we have that all fresh in our mind, and talk a little bit about the work readiness skills that we want to incorporate in our classrooms and teaching. And after that, I want to introduce you to a brand new field testing report that we have just completed at World Education, which profiles some innovative program models of tech integration. And I also want to share some lessons from it. After that, we're going to go over to a repository that we have, which is called workforceedtech.org. It has a lot of tech tools, and it is growing every month as we add new tech tools to it. And we would like you to be part of that community as well. So we'll go there for a tour briefly, and then at the end, we'll try to put it all together and try to have a discussion and some question time for what it all means, the way you're approaching your practice and what you're doing in your programs. In the meantime, always feel free to pop in a question in the chat window. That should be to your right. And if you can raise your hand, I don't know if we have that capability, but feel free to use the chat window. And in a little bit, we're going to have you respond to a question as well, and that should be done in the chat window too. So welcome again. So now to get us started, I feel that it's 2019, and to kind of make the case for integrating technology is getting to be a little bit old, just because we all know the power of technology and how it's transforming our jobs, workplaces, people's lives as we lead them day to day, and how big of a part technology is playing within that, and how important it is for our learners to be adept at using technology. Unfortunately, we're still at a place where millions of folks in this country, including our adult learners, are having trouble with their, to upskill themselves in terms of the digital literacy skills and technology skills because of a multitude of reasons. So I think it's the onus is on us as well to think about how we can integrate technology, especially seamlessly, within our programming and in our classrooms, so that they have a higher confidence in the way they're learning, because we do know from research that technology can and does amplify and extend instructional strategies. If you are a teacher in a classroom who's having trouble just getting the number of hours and the kind of content in your limited classroom time, you can definitely use technology. And we're going to talk about some of those tools today to extend learning for them. One of the other big barriers for adult students is that they only have a limited amount of time in their day to devote to their academic pursuits. And use of technology it's been found that it does have an impact on accelerating learning if they're able to if they're able to kind of revise what they have learned in the classroom at a later time outside of the classroom, leading to greater retention. And then if we're using technology in new and innovative ways, the students feel confident in even applying them to other outside examples and the way they're approaching their lives and especially jobs. So with that being said, I'm going to go into the idea of, I'm sure this is not news to you. You're all very interested in technology. So I'm going to pass the mic on to Kathleen for our little activity here.
Okay, hi, this is Kathleen. So we want to find out a little bit more about you and what tech tools you are currently using in your classrooms, if you're a teacher or in the program, if you're sort of running a program, and in what sense are you extending learning, improving communication, career exploration, something like that. So if you feel free to write into the chat window any sort of tech tool that you've been using. I mean, it could be as simple as Quizlet, which is something that I really like to use in my workplace class because I can actually take pictures in the workplace and put vocabulary under the picture, and then students can use their phone to study. So let's see. I think I'm seeing the chat window. I haven't seen any responses yet. Am I seeing the chat window, Mike?
Yeah, I believe you are. But usually when we ask people to respond via chat, it takes them some time to think and.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So some of the ways that I've been doing it in my class, as I say, I use tech tools, but fairly simple tools. I teach in a workplace program. My students are frontline service sector workers. So as I said, I do use Quizlet quite a bit. Some students have downloaded the USA Learns apps for kind of quick practice and review. The 4 of those are now free on the Google Play Store or on the Apple App Store. You can get those for free. We use Google Slides quite a bit for writing and posting pictures and so forth, and other other of the Google tools. Okay, let's see, Janet here. Let's see, I'm missing these. Okay. Here we go. See, Janet, you say you use WhatsApp. I'd like to try that. I haven't tried that yet. Students taught me how to use it, use a projector when available to share images, videos, text being written collectively, text word processing, and internet browsers. Great. Yeah, so that sounds very similar, I think, to what, similar in some senses to what I've been using. We also were really lucky to be a field test site for CellEd, which is one of the XPRIZE apps, which we'll be talking about later. But there's a lot on there, and that was really a chance for students to extend their learning. And as I said, we will talk about that a little bit more. Are there any others? Okay. Let's see. Sarah said that all participants is not an option in my drop-down box. I think it's all attendees is what the option is. Well, and so what we can do is as we move through this, feel free to add more into the chat window, because as I said, we'd really like to hear from you and hear what's working, and so that you can all learn from each other. All right, thank you.
And the other thing, Kathleen, I would like to add to what you mentioned is that Kathleen and I work on this Learning Circles project together, and what we have found is that similar to you, Janet, we're having teachers come back and say that the students are using WhatsApp. So pushing the teacher a little bit to also use WhatsApp to communicate between classes or between learning circles, to keep that community connection going. And one of the programs we worked with last year also used WhatsApp in a very interesting way, where they tried to extend learning that happened in the classroom by just sending a resource between classes on WhatsApp and have students look at it or respond to it, or have like a critical thinking activity built in so that they were able to scan the article and then respond to a question that she had asked within the WhatsApp. So all outside of the classroom, extending learning that was happening in the classroom. So again, we would love to hear from you. Maybe we can add in whatever you want, whatever you're using, and then we'll also have some time to talk about some of this. So one of the reasons that we wanted to talk about the employability skills framework is just to sort of have our context shift a little bit to just thinking about technology just as technology, but also thinking about technology be a way to a means, so that we're using technology to our own advantage rather than thinking about, oh, how do we integrate technology without any context. So I'm sure our work in adult education has been transformed in the last couple of years as we have all in the past decade thought about integrating college and career readiness skills within our programming, within our classrooms, starting at a very early level learner all the way up to the transitions level. But then now we're all beginning to think about incorporating workplace skills, work readiness skills, job readiness skills, same thing, but different names, into our programming as well, because we're now thinking about the learner workers and thinking about how students can get these skills as they are getting their academic skills in our classrooms, to get them to be job ready or be eligible to apply for a promotion or a new job within a work that they're already doing, based on the skills that they're learning in our classroom. So there's several. If you think about job readiness skills and work readiness skills, a lot of things come up. There's a lot of different resources developed by different states and different organizations. My favorite definitely is the Employability Skills Framework. It was developed by the Department of Education several years ago, and it is an interactive tool that helps educators especially incorporate employability skills into instruction. And if I was in a room with all of you and not meeting you virtually, I would ask you to have a show of hands of how many of you have are familiar with the Employability Skills Framework, and I'm assuming that most of your hands are going to go up. But I just wanted to reinforce the importance and the continued relevance of the Employability Skills Framework, because it does break down the whole idea of job readiness in a very helpful, reinforcing way. I keep on going back to it often enough to really think through what are the different skills necessary that I'm currently need to use in the classrooms. So if you go to the website that's at the bottom of the page, and we'll, in addition to this webinar being recorded, we'll also send the PowerPoint to you as a PDF afterwards. You can, this diagram that you see here it's very interactive if you end up on their website, and then you can sort of click on it, and actually it really breaks down what they mean by, say, resource management, like it's time management, and what else do you do with the resources you have to develop those workplace skills, or how do you use resources to be successful in a workplace. So it has all these different tiers built into it that you can explore more. And as we're all working on workforce readiness skills in the classroom, it's also good to know, once you visit this, that how much of this you're already integrating. You just kind of have to name it or rename it to make sure that you're doing things like resume building, different ways of resume building in the classroom, using technology to problem solve. If you have students go online and do research, Janet, you mentioned that you use internet with your students. They're already doing some of these things where they're really interacting with information, maybe trying to determine if it's a valid information resource and all of that good stuff. So it's a resource out there. Please feel free to use it. The other two things that I like about the website is that it has a checklist that really breaks the skills down, that is helpful as you're thinking about your lesson plans. The other thing that I like is that it also has sample lesson plans and sample workforce preparation activities sort of buried in the website, but you should be able to find it if you spend some time on the website. So please explore this. So the meat of the conversation today is I want to introduce you to this new report that we just finished last month, where we worked with this with 7 tech tools for over a year with funding from Walmart Foundation to kind of see how these tools were used in different contexts and what are the best practices that come out of it, and I wanted to use the time today to briefly go over the findings that we have, because even though the findings were specific to these tools, the findings are a little, we by design made it a little bit more generic, so we're able to think about it in our larger context in our practice as well. I want to briefly go over the 7 tools that we tested. And so we tested CellEd. Some of you might be familiar with it. Kathleen is going to talk about it in a little bit. It's a phone-based learning application for English language learners. That's to put it very simply, and I'm going to give a very simplistic explanation of what each one of these tools do. SkillSmart is almost like a job matching screening in kind of tool that learners can use to explore jobs and apply for them. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about each one of those in a second. And Care Academy is, again, a blended version of a home health aid certificate, which is a new product in that sense. And we tested it locally, so there's some local connection in Boston here. And North Star Digital Literacy Assessment, most of you are probably familiar with it. This is something that we had that we tested in Minneapolis and Providence. And this is a digital literacy assessment that's catching a lot of traction these days. And based on findings from our project, from this report, they were also able to do some changes within their product, which was very exciting. And then Nepris is a career exploration tool. PAIRIN is more of a personality assessment, trait exploration kind of tool, matching folks to the kind of jobs they would be good at. And SignalVine is a texting platform. So we field tested each one of these in different contexts, some CBOs, some American Job Centers, the one-stop centers, some with community colleges, some with the adult education program. There is a whole 1-hour webinar that we did with the findings being much deeper and presented in a deeper fashion a month ago. And when we send out this webinar to you, we'll include that link as well, so you can have access to it if you're interested. So our first finding was around how mobile solutions can make learning, training, and coaching more accessible and scalable. So we used CellEd and in a workplace context, and I'll have Kathleen talk a little bit more about that. Kathleen? Kathleen, we can't hear you. So what I will do is...
I'm sorry. Now I'm back. I'm having to use the phone because my headset was not working. So my classes at the Seaport Hotel were a field test site for CellEd. So we actually gave feedback to the company as time went by. So CellEd, like any app, they have 24/7 access to it, and that really made a big difference to my students. Many of them work a late shift, and they get home at 2 or 3 in the morning, and they can't sleep, and so this was a time when many would study. Or people said that they used it on the bus, they used it on the subway, while they're waiting for their children to, finish a sport, they would tend to use it. So that was great, and it's also effective because each lesson sort of begins and ends. The company says within three minutes, but my students said it actually takes about 10 minutes. But that's very helpful for people that don't have much time. So you can use it on a bus ride. If something's going to take you an hour, obviously, if you start on a bus ride, you're not going to finish it. Another feature of it is that there are coaches. So, for instance, many apps have sort of a nudge, like, hey, I haven't seen you on in a few days. When are you going to come back? Whereas this one has those, but they also have a live coach. So the students will, get a text saying, Juana, I haven't seen you on in a few days. What's going on? Or I see that you've been trying to log in. Are you having problems? What's the problem? And they'd actually work it out with them, and sometimes call them and actually talk to them. So I think the students really, really liked that. They liked knowing that there was somebody live on the other end. Of course, a person isn't always there, but still, I think that people really like that. Another aspect that was great for me as a teacher is that we could see, we had a dashboard to see when students were using it. We could see the answers that they gave, so I could tell if somebody was stuck on something, or maybe somebody had been put into the wrong level. This happened a few times because during placement, students were kind of helping each other, which I didn't realize was happening. So some people were placed in too high a level, but I was able to catch that through the dashboard. So that's about it. And this now is one of the 4 apps that is being offered through the X Prize. So you can get this. You can have your students download this for free from now until August 31st. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this webinar. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to send them to me in the chat box.
Thanks, Kathleen. So Monica has a very good question. Her question is, how many of the tools were already trying to serve low-income adults at the start of the pilot versus any that wanted to expand their customer base and service offering to those individuals through the pilot? So the answer to that is mixed. It depends from tool to tool. So CellEd, for example, has always served low-income adults, low-literacy adults since their inception as a company. And they, through this project, actually wanted to know how to make their product better, not necessarily expand their customer base, because I think that's something that's happening for them in parallel. And Monica, if it's okay, I'll quickly take a minute to sort of go through company by company, since you have asked a very insightful question. And in terms of SkillSmart, which is sort of like a skills-based job matching platform, which uses screening in rather than screening out, they also have been working with low-income adults just because they work with employers who hire at scale for new companies or new projects that are coming into a region. For Boston, we had Encore Boston, which is a local casino that's opening this summer. They were using SkillSmart to hire from the community, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to SkillSmart. The Care Academy, again, same thing. They always they serve low-income adults just by design, just because people who are at the front line of a lot of these home care workers are low income and low skilled, and the idea the Care Academy had is how we can use intensive online training with sort of like a minimum amount of face-to-face training, saving cost for the students as well as the employers, to get them a home health aide certificate so they can be eligible for more hourly pay. For North Star, similar, it's adult ed is kind of where they come from, so this was not a new market for them. Nepris, on the other hand, usually has worked directly with community colleges, serving as a career exploration, career matching platform. And through this pilot, they were able to work with some CBOs and some adult ed programs or one-stop centers. But again, because this is a license that's usually bought by an institution, it did expand their customer base a little bit, and they're very interested in looking at new ways of expanding their customer base and service offerings. For PAIRIN, similar, because they do work with low-income, low-skilled students. Just the context was different. This was more adult education programs and CBOs. Signalvine, the texting platform by design, is used extensively in the higher ed world, especially around financial aid. And I'll talk about it in a second. The next slide, I'll change over. So Signalvine is a texting platform. What is interesting about it is that it's a two-way messaging platform that is rooted in the nudge theory, which is this idea that positive reinforcement and suggestions given at the right time can influence behavior. And they do rely a lot on data analytics on the other end to send personalized and proactive text nudges. I'm sorry, I don't know why it says this picture can't be displayed. Don't worry, it's nothing radical. It's probably just the image of a phone. And the goal of these nudges that are sent through Signalvine are to support positive behaviors, that lead to employment, persistence, completion, attending classes for some learners, and in a way so that people are able to reach out to more students and clients. A lot of workforce development organizations refer to their students as clients in a mass text, but just by design, it's made to look as if it's catered specifically to a person to attend a class. So Signalvine spends some time with, say, for example, your program to help you customize your messages. They have templates, but they're not super helpful because they want it to be as generic as possible so you can make it your own. So basically, smart programmed responses. So if I say, have you submitted your time card, for example, here, if you say yes, you'll get a saved response. If you say no, you'll get another response. If you say not sure, you'll get a third response. And then there's like a decision tree that happens afterwards. And what we found when we worked with a CBO in California is that they saved a lot of staff time by getting students to come to an event using Signalvine versus somebody in their office trying to get a hold of students one at a time or using email. Carefully timed text messages had a much better result, and they continue to use it to to this day and plan to moving forward. So that was a really good outcome that we saw. And again, as I'm talking through this, I'm trying to go fast so I can show you some more tools, but feel free to stop us and ask questions. So the other finding we had was that the screening and solutions are really helpful to make, to build up the confidence of our learners, as well as signaling to employers that our work, we're responding to what the needs are in the local area. And in that, I want to highlight PAIRIN and SkillSmart. So PAIRIN is they call it the attribute-based assessment that basically looks like this, where after you fill in their assessment, you have some traits that, are spit out by the system, for the lack of a better word. And then it also shows you the kind of jobs that you will particularly be good for. And there was a lot of positive reinforcement to students when they got the assessment results, because it really highlighted their positive traits and tried to match it to jobs that are actually available in their neighborhood and their region, not just say, hey, you'll be a good technician, but actually connect it with the local job market to make sure that there's a clear connection with what kinds of jobs they would be good at, to actual training that's available in the local area, and also jobs that are available in the local area. And then the one-stop center, this workforce solutions organizations that we worked with, a lot of times catered some of the training and advising based on the assessment results of their learners. And one of the learners that we saw really ended up in a job that she's extremely happy in as a certified water operator, something that she never thought she'd be interested in or even knew it existed. But having a job coach work through her training piece and then getting to help her get a job was really powerful. And we captured a lot of powerful student stories over the course of this project, which you can see on the website of the EdTech Center. So I know I'm going super fast. Feel free to chime in with a message anytime you want. SkillSmart is another tool that we tested. This is basically a job search, job application platform, which is purchased typically by employers who are employing people at scale. So if there's, for example, a new hotel, a new large construction project, or something else that's happening in a region, they get SkillSmart as one of the ways of seeking local applicants. And they also actively work with local adult education programs, workforce development organizations to basically increase the kind of applications they're going to get for a job. So we tested it in 2 places in Massachusetts. We tested it in Chelsea, in Chelsea Collaborative, which is right outside of Boston. And there's a new hotel for those of you in Massachusetts, and if you could come to Boston, there's a new multi-story casino that's being built right in the city called the Encore. And they are hiring about 5,000 plus people for that hotel, all the way from the frontline workers to the chef and managers and everybody in between. And Encore decided to use SkillSmart as a way of interacting with local organizations. So what SkillSmart does that is special and different than a lot of other job matching platforms is that it works with employers to to distill each one of the jobs that they have open into specific skills, and not necessarily based on credentials or extremely relevant experiences that if you've had an extremely relevant experience, even as a volunteer somewhere, and you can capture that as a skill on the SkillSmart platforms, you can be matched to things that you didn't even think existed. So the other place we tested this was at MGM Springfield, out in Springfield, Massachusetts, where they worked with local organizations, including the New England Farm Workers Council, to get folks to be greeters at the hotel. One of the volunteers, one of the person I met, she was a volunteer or an usher at her church, and she used that experience to be a greeter at the hotel because she has a lot of relevant experience just, saying hello to people, making that sort of like small talk so that they feel comfortable. And she was able to translate that into a skill that can be verified and then be eligible to apply for a job that she wouldn't otherwise get because that's not, quote unquote, her work experience or traditional work experience had been. So that's sort of like the power of SkillSmart. And but what it also means is that, to me, what it also signals is that the way employers are also looking at jobs are changing. I'm sure a lot of you are aware that there's this increased weight given to skills-based placement of jobs and competency-based placement and promotions within companies rather than just strictly based on credentials, because employers are more and more realizing that a degree is not everything. It's about what you actually know, and something that a skill that you already have that is crucial to a job. So, for example, I met with this person. She worked as a dishwasher, and then based on her experience as a dishwasher, she was able to place into a job that she thought was really exciting, and she could earn more than just being a dishwasher at a restaurant. And she was able to apply for it through the SkillSmart platform. So that's another exciting trend that we're seeing is this move towards more skills-based hiring and competency-based hiring. And I'm pretty sure we're still at the beginning of this trend, but like 5 years from now, we would definitely be having a different conversation around it. So the other finding we had was around tools that support establishing personal connection. Nepris is one of the tools that that you can connect to with industry expert. It's a very good career exploration tool. What you need to know around Nepris is that they have this free, apart from the paid licensed aspect of it, there's a free version. The free version of Nepris includes this piece called Career Explorer. If you go to their website, and you go to the Career Explorer, you can see thousands and thousands. I think now they say there's 7,000 plus. You can see 7,000 plus videos of actual people talking to students and answering their questions. So that's something I would really strongly urge you to take a look at, because that's definitely something you can use right away in your classrooms and programs, and that part is free. The license part is where you can actually actively seek a volunteer to come and talk to your classroom via like a video chat. So big thumbs up for Nepris there for making it making the archive videos being available for free. And this is a student we talked to who was able to connect with somebody who he ended up working for later on through Nepris. The other thing, and I think this is more one of the obvious findings, is that, excuse me, the more interactive something is, the more visuals and interactive an app or a program is, the more engaging it is. So one of the things that we found was that Care Academy, which is this home health aid certification software that you can learn through most of the content that you want online through their videos and content that's in a course format, and then only meet some hours a week face-to-face, reducing the total intensity, well, increasing the intensity of the overall course, but reducing the cost of doing the course just because there's less face-to-face component of it. People were really engaged in the content just because there were a lot of really good videos that went through a lot of the technical things that a home health aide needs to do. And most of our students passed the certification exam by the end of our pilot. So that was very exciting. And North Star, I'm sure most of you are already familiar with North Star. We had North Star, we worked with Providence Housing Authority and I think Providence Public Library too, right, to test this, and also in Minnesota. And we were able to we found that the more interactive the assessment was, more engaging it was for students, and they were able to go through it faster and even learn from that experience, and that the learnings from our field testing were really able to inform the next version of North Star. So you have not checked out North Star recently, feel free to check it out now. They have updated a lot of the assessments based on the field testing results, and also the feedback we were getting from learners during the field testing. And they have also added some new modules. So feel free to check them out. So moving on to, I wanted to talk to you about two more things. So one of the, and I'm going to talk about the first one here in the interest of time. One of the most important findings to me, as you know, we all work in the field together, is as you're thinking about integrating technology, especially a new technology into the classroom or a technology tool, what turned out to be the most crucial thing, and this is intuitive, is that the simplest the onboarding this was for a particular tool, the more success the classroom and the learner had in using it. So I think that to me is a huge lesson, and that I always keep in mind as we're thinking about introducing something new in the class. It's like, what is the barrier that they're going to face right away, and how do we take it away? So for example, if you're using a tool that has a very complex login process, then that's not going to work really well. So to simplify that is something that you need to really think through. And even that could be a way to decide between two tools, is what is the onboarding process for say, two tools, and go with the one that's simpler. So I know that my colleague Kathleen has to go off and teach a class right after this. So Kathleen, I hope you're still there and are able to walk us through some opportunity that's very timely, and then I will talk about more tools afterwards.
Sure, I'm still here, but I have about 2 minutes. So who out there has already signed up for the XPRIZE apps, or is aware of the XPRIZE community's competition? Anyone out there? Looking for a response in the chat window. Yeah, so if you're not, there are 4 apps, the ones you see here on your screen: Amrita Learning, Learning Upgrade, CellEd, and Codex, Lost Words of Atlantis, that are available now for free using, if you want to use the Team World Ed code, 3366. And between now and August 31st, if your students download them, they can then use them for a whole year. So 2 of them, the 2 in the middle, Learning Upgrade and CellEd, are available on Apple phones and Samsung, Android phones, and the other 2 are only available on Android phones. One thing I wanted to say about this as a teacher is one thing that I learned in our CellEd field test was that spending time in class, letting students upload these and use them for, say, 15 minutes over a couple of weeks. So every class or every other class, I would give them 15, 20 minutes to use the app, just help them, sort of to work out any kinks, or just sort of know that it was there. People have a lot of stuff on their phones, and they sometimes forget that they have this great app there waiting to be used. And some of the apps, it takes a little time before you get to, really get to the good stuff that grabs you. So in my current class, I have students using all of these apps. One person has chosen the Codex app. Some people are still using the CellEd app. In fact, I have one guy who's spent over 80 hours at this point using it. And then I have people using the other two as well. If you want to join our team, you want to go to the next page, Priyanka? You can see the website there at Tech Center at WorldEd, Team WorldEd X Prize. So we're a team growing all of the time. The benefit to joining our team is that you'll get updates about webinars. But even if you don't join the team, it's a great website. You can find flyers, all sorts. You can click on the links and learn more about each of the apps. There's a lot on there, so it's definitely worth visiting. And I would encourage you to use these apps with your students. As I say, outside of class, it really, really extends their learning time. And I've heard nothing but positive things from my students. So with that, I am leaving you and running down the street to teach my class. So I wish you all well.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. And if any of you have questions for Kathleen, I'm going to try to field them or have her respond to it later and email it out to you. Thank you, Kathleen. Hope you have a good class. So the other thing that I just wanted to reinforce about Team WorldEd website, which you see on here, is that it has a lot of, and Mike has been a big part of it as well. It has a lot of resources to even get you oriented about what the team means, how can you take advantage of this opportunity, and also it has some wallet cards, some flyers that you can customize for your classroom, for your programs, to help learners take advantage of this. I cannot stress this enough that these 4 apps have all shown incredible evidence of being able to accelerate learning for native speakers and non-native speakers. So as part of like an earlier phase of the competition. So for them to be free to learners for a year after they have been downloaded is profound. And some of these are going to be under license only right after the competition ends in August. So like CellEd and Learning Upgrade, all of these are expensive otherwise. So it's a good opportunity to try these out and help them and help your learners be more comfortable with using apps to accelerate learning. And if you have any questions about the X Prize piece, then feel free to ask it here. And if I don't have the answer to it, maybe Mike does, or I can get the answers to you from my colleagues who are working more on the X Prize piece. So the other thing that I wanted to cover in this hour together is thinking about, I went through 7 tools super quickly, some of which you found to be very interesting. There are probably other tools that you have been interested in, but never sort of had the time to think about how you can use it in the classroom. The biggest advice I have is that, and I think this is also intuitive, is that we always need to know the goal. So we came up with this like nifty thing, goal before tool. Like we'd really need to figure out why is it that you want to use something, to what end and what purpose, and is it actually crucial to the purpose that you want to achieve. So to help us work through this together, what we came up with is that we started with that idea, and then we developed a tool criteria, which are just a set of questions, and I'm going to show them to you in a second, that you should ask yourself before you're thinking about integrating anything in your classroom related to technology. Because you might have gone to a good conference and then somebody was very convincing and be like, hey, try CellEd, it's wonderful. It's like, well, let's think about it before you do that. And what are some of the questions that you have that you need answers before you introduce it in the classroom. And I think taking a step back and thinking through and reflecting on these questions is very effective in making the integration of that tool be seamless and intentional. So the other thing that I wanted to do today was talk about the repository. So this is, we call it the repository because it's mostly a repository of tech tools. So the one thing that came out of that project that I just sort of quickly rattled through the findings and the different tools that we studied was that we decided to use our learnings, use our tool criteria like that, and move the work forward in developing a repository of tools. And right now, without further ado, I'm going to try and share my screen with you, and hopefully this will work. Okay, great. Okay, so if you go to workforceedtech.org, and I'm here under /tools, this is where you'll end up, which is you can explore tech tools to accelerate career advancement and lifelong learning. But as I promised before, I want to take you to another section of the website, which is tool criteria. So if you go to tool criteria, it talks about how you need to evaluate the pros and cons of a tool before you're introducing it in any context, program-wide or classroom-wide. And this is our effort at coming up with the questions that you might want to ask yourself. If you have any feedback for us for any of these, we would be ecstatic to receive it. So please feel free to share if you think a question is out of line or not helpful, or if you have some other questions that you think should be part of this. This is definitely a living document, and we would love to make it be more effective for everyone. And then, so for example, one of the things that a lot of times comes into play is, well, what is the digital literacy of your current students that's required? And would it even work in your current setting or current classroom? So again, I urge you to take a look at this, go through it, sort of have these questions be answered before you're integrating any tool in your context. So there's the tool evaluation criteria. Now I'm going to go to the tech tools piece and show you what it looks like. The way we've organized it is that we have organized it in 5 different sections. And some, of course, you cannot sort everything cleanly, so we have it across sections. And so some tools appear in more than one of these. So learning and training, if you go here, I just wanted to go through one tool so that you can kind of see how it's organized, and then you can navigate it on your own time later. So I want to go through to CELED and see what's happening here. So if you go to CELED, it starts harmlessly with just the description of the tool, and then you can kind of see the tags, and you can, kind of get a sense of what this is about. Then we came up with the key features of this tool. This is to save you time as you are looking at a new tool. And then it has some screenshots over here. We tried to include as many evidence of effectiveness as we could find. Not every tool has that, but we tried to get at least some evidence of effectiveness. And then we tried to get testimonials from the field of people who have actually used it and what do they say about it. And then there's some key tips for implementation. And if there's been a case study, this case study kind of talks about the report that I just mentioned, because CELED was one of the tools in there, but other tools have other case studies here, and then there's other digital resources attached to this. So that's kind of the layout of each one of the tools. And again, we are constantly changing things here, adding things here. So feel free to check this out. And you may end up finding tools that you wouldn't, that you're probably curious about, but just need more more information on. So I hope you have some nice tool discovery time on this website. And so I'm going to pause for a second because we have 5 minutes left, and I want to get a sense from you, if you've all been very quiet, of what this means for your own practice, your instruction, and your students, and how can you adapt these learnings that I mentioned, or some of the tools that I mentioned and other tools that you already have in mind in your classroom, and what resources you will need. And I'll pause, giving you time to send your responses. As you work on your responses or any comments that you have, I'm going to at least use our time together to tell you about this additional resource. So if you are interested in EdTech in general, especially as it relates to workforce preparation activities, job readiness, and EdTech in that vein, I would recommend that you at least, if you are on Twitter, follow us at Workforce EdTech. It is a very new Twitter handle where we're trying to get resources together around workforce EdTech tools. And then we also have a LinkedIn group, which I think is 100 strong and going, where it's, employer partners, tech tool developers, classroom teachers, program administrators, and everybody in between, talking about integrating EdTech tools into the classroom, into programs, into practice in general. And if you click on the link there, it's a closed group, so you just have to kind of join, and then the facilitator will let you in, and you'll be able to be part of discussions which are very rich, and there's something or else happening there every week. So I would urge you to join that. I haven't really gotten any responses, so I'm hoping you're still typing them and thinking about what is it from today that you can use in your practice. I don't know, Mike, if you have gotten any responses from folks.
I think you're just being crystal clear. I'm just handling some clarifying questions around some of the XPRIZE apps, and which are available for Android and iPhone. But in terms of substantive questions around the tools, I think you're being really clear, and people are on the same page.
Great, thanks, Mike. If folks don't have any more questions, it's awesome that we can end on time. I want to really thank you for being here. And if you have any further questions, feel free to email Kathleen or me directly. And stay tuned for future NELRC webinars. If you go to nelrc.org/PD, you'll be able to see a couple of interesting webinars we have coming up. I think I'm doing a webinar around data at the end of May as well. So I will see you online soon. Thank you so much for attending, and wait to get the recording from us as well as this PowerPoint deck in the coming days. Thank you so much.